On Tuesday morning, the New York City Council Speaker, Corey Johnson, called for a citywide, mandatory quarantine like the one San Francisco enacted on Monday.
"We are making incremental solutions when we should be ripping the Band-Aid off," Mr. Johnson said on the Brian Lehrer radio show on WNYC on Tuesday.
But Gov. Andrew M. Cuomo immediately shot it down.
"It cannot happen," Mr. Cuomo said in a briefing 15 minutes later. "No city in the state can quarantine itself without state approval, and I have no interest whatsoever and no plan whatsoever to quarantine any city."
Mr. Cuomo said any move to implement a quarantine would be statewide, comprehensive, but that there was none in the works.
As of Tuesday morning, 1,374 people in New York State have tested positive for the virus, up from 950 the day before, with 644 cases in the city. 12 people have died from the virus in New York State, including 7 in the city. Mayor de Blasio said the city was on pace to hit 1,000 cases this week.
The outbreak is projected to peak in 45 days, on May 1, Mr. Cuomo said, at which point the state will need 55,000 to 110,000 hospital beds and 18,600 to 37,000 intensive care beds.
"The peak will very likely overwhelm New York's healthcare system," Mr. Cuomo said. "The state currently has about 53,000 hospital beds and 3,000 intensive care beds. 80% of the intensive care beds are already occupied," he said.
"The numbers are daunting," Mr. Cuomo said. "What are we doing? Everything we can."
Mr. Cuomo urged New Yorkers to get out and enjoy their city and state parks and try to relax. Donning his therapist-in-chief hat, he allowed himself a digression about the emotional toll of dealing with all the strictures of life under the coronavirus.
"Don't hug. Don't kiss. Stay 6 feet away. We're emotional beings and it is important for us, especially at times of fear, times of stress, to feel connected to someone, to feel comforted by someone," the governor said, adding that he was brokenhearted that he had not seen his daughter in 2 weeks. Mr. Cuomo has said that one of his 3 daughters was in self-isolation after contact with someone who tested positive for the virus.
Mayor Bill de Blasio of New York City has, from the beginning of the crisis caused by coronavirus, used the great disasters of the last 100 years as a reference point. On Tuesday, he warned New Yorkers to brace themselves for economic hardship like something out of the Great Depression.
Appearing on CNN, the mayor pleaded for the federal government to provide cash aid to people whose livelihoods have been affected, directly or indirectly, by the virus and said the city's upended existence could last well through the summer.
"The federal government needs to put money back in the hands of people," said the mayor, a second-term Democrat. "We need direct income replacement at this point."
Restrictions on the city's 25,000 restaurants, which are now allowed only to do takeout and delivery, will likely remain in place for months. "Thank God some people will still be employed," the mayor said.
On Monday, after Governor Cuomo waived the 7-day waiting period to apply for unemployment, the surge of new claims crashed the state Labor Department's website. The agency said it received more than triple the calls it had the week before, a rush it likened to the aftermath of 9/11.
"This is a deep, deep economic hole," Mr. Cuomo said. "You'll have businesses closed that never reopen."
On Tuesday, Governor Philip D. Murphy of New Jersey said that a 5-year-old had tested positive for the virus, stressing that the disease affects people of every age.
"We have a lot of teenagers and young adults who think, I am too healthy. I've heard even if I get this, the symptoms are mild," he said. "Even if you have a mild case and God willing that 5-year-old will have a mild case, you can pass this virus on without even knowing it." Cases in New Jersey nearly doubled in a day on Monday, up to 178, from 98 on Sunday. Connecticut reported 41 confirmed cases on Monday, up from 26 on Sunday. As the coronavirus has swept across New York, officials have become increasingly alarmed about a bleak reality: the state may not have enough ventilators for everybody who could need one. It is possible that the state could slow down the spread of the virus enough to curb the demand for ventilators, the machines that help the sickest patients breathe. But a panel convened a few years ago by the state found that in the worst-case scenario of a flu-like pandemic, New York could be short by as many as 15,783 ventilators at the peak of the crisis. The panel, the New York State Task Force on Life and the Law, studied ventilators for years before issuing a 2015 report offering guidance for hospitals on how to decide whom to ventilate and whom to effectively let die during an emergency. The advice is now frighteningly relevant.
While a national stockpile of ventilators exists, it is unclear how the machines will be doled out. In a conference call on Monday with a group of governors, including Gov. Andrew M. Cuomo of New York, President Trump said that states should not count on the federal government for more ventilators or other equipment.
We will be backing you, Mr. Trump said, according to a recording of the call, but try getting it yourselves.
Mr. Trump on Tuesday wrote a Twitter post directed at Mr. Cuomo, continuing a multi-day spat between the president and the governor of the state with the most coronavirus infections.
Cuomo wants all states to be treated the same, Mr. Trump wrote. But all states aren't the same.
Andrew, keep politics out of it, he added.
Later on Tuesday, though, the two leaders appeared to have a temporary truce after speaking.
My conversation with Andrew Cuomo was a very good one and a very productive one, and I appreciate that, Mr. Trump said in a news briefing.
In his own briefing, Mr. Cuomo said that he wanted to work with the president and that he had put his hand out in partnership.
The president is doing the right thing in offering to step up for New York, Mr. Cuomo said.
People who fail to abide by emergency rules that ban eating at restaurants can expect a ticket and maybe even handcuffs, according to police enforcement guidance issued on Monday.
The rules, outlined in an executive order that Mayor Bill de Blasio signed on Monday, limit food establishments to takeout and delivery only.
The order, which also required gyms and entertainment venues like nightclubs and theaters to close, took effect at 8 p.m. on Monday, and was preceded with a directive from the governor that banned gatherings of 50 people or more in New York.
A police memo advised officers who come across violations of the mayor's emergency rules that they can order food establishments vacated, as well as issue summonses to restaurant owners.
If owners refuse officers' orders, they can be arrested and given a desk appearance ticket ordering them to show up in court at a later date.
Likewise, customers who refuse to leave can be given a ticket for disobeying a lawful order to disperse or arrested.
A police official noted that the department does not anticipate that the options detailed in the memo would be widely invoked because officials expect the ongoing crisis will, in some measure, begin to align the work of the police and the desires public to fight the pandemic.
Some restaurants were not taking chances.
A sign outside Mama's 2, a pizza joint on the Upper West Side, advised customers that they would need to wait outside while the restaurant took slice orders one at a time.
As 8 p.m. drew close, the lights at a Midtown bar went from dim to bright, signaling closing time. The bar owner slumped toward the front door and customers followed her somberly.
See you until, whenever, the owner said. I have to close by 8 p.m. The precinct is doing a business check by then.
Bars are closed, the theaters are shuttered, and not even the mayor can perform his morning workout. But one constant remains in New York City: alternate side parking is still in effect.
That's still being discussed, Mayor Bill de Blasio said at a news conference on Monday, when asked whether the city would suspend the practice.
On Tuesday morning, the rules were still being enforced.
Alternate side parking rules, the bane of New York City's car owners, require vehicles to be moved out of the way of street cleaners on one side of the street on specific days, often twice a week.
The rules are waived on holidays and are often suspended for days at a time during snow and other kinds of foul weather.
But with the city health department urging New Yorkers to stay home as much as possible, a growing number of motorists and elected officials have been calling for the city to suspend a rule that forces people out of their homes.
It's completely insane, that alternate side of the street parking has not been suspended, City Council Speaker Corey Johnson said on Tuesday.
Laura Fayer, a spokeswoman for the mayor, said that car owners who received alternate side parking tickets while under self-isolation could have the tickets dismissed with medical documentation or testimony.
On Tuesday, all New York City recreation centers and nature centers closed to the public until further notice, the Parks Department said. City parks and playgrounds remain open.
One caution, New York City does not regularly clean outdoor furniture and play equipment, and estimates on how long the coronavirus can survive on surfaces range widely, from a couple of minutes to days.
We have not yet committed to changing our standard operations due to coronavirus, said Megan Lalor, a spokeswoman for the City Parks Department, but we will continue to monitor the situation as it develops.
Dr. Sean O'Leary, M.D., an executive member of the American Academy of Pediatrics Committee on Infectious Diseases, said playgrounds are probably not the safest place right now. He recommended going to big, wide-open parks when available.
The New York Times is looking for New York City teachers to tell us about the switch to remote learning. We want to hear about lesson plans, what you're learning from colleagues during training, and how you're planning to check on students that need the most support.
If you can, send us a screenshot of your lesson, or a photo of your home classroom setup. Your name and comments may be published, but your contact information will not. A reporter or editor may follow up with you.
Jonah Engel-Bromwich, Annie Coriel, Luis Ferre-Siderny, Joseph Goldstein, Jessica Gross, Matthew Hogg, Karina Knoll, Patrick McGeehan, Jesse McKinley, Andy Newman, Amelia Nierenberg, Jan Ransom, Brian M. Rosenthal, Matthew Sadaka, Eliza Shapiro, Ashley Southall, Liam Stack, Tracy Tully and Michael Wilson contributed reporting.